Good evening, seniors. This is Ms. Gilmore. Thank you guys for logging on tonight. If you would just try to make sure that your microphones remain muted throughout the presentation until the very end. I will not be giving the presentation, but Ms. Carmichael, she's with Leela. She will be giving the presentation on tonight. So I hope that you guys, I'll be on with you guys, but I just hope that you guys stay tuned in to the very end. Because we want to make sure that you guys have an understanding of the financial aid process. And just remember that submitting your FAFSA information is a graduation requirement. So we're just gonna wait a few more minutes for some other students to log on, and then after that, I will turn the floor over to Ms. Carmichael.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. This is Ann Carmichael, and I am going to get started now. We may have some others that do join us, but we'll just admit them to the room when they do. So hold on just a minute. If everyone will mute their microphones, that will be great. Now, I hope by the end of the presentation, you do have a better understanding of the student financial aid process. And if you have questions as I move through the presentation, if you will use the chat Zoom box, we're going to go through those. Okay. Mrs. Gilmore, can you tell me if you can see the presentation screen?
Yes, ma'am, I can. And students, I will be monitoring the chat box for you guys to assist Ms. Carmichael with any questions you may have. Sorry, but Mark's household, can you mute your, I think they may have hung up. No, I'm sorry, Mark's household, could you please mute your mic for us, please? Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. I'm
I
sorry.
appreciate it. Oh, no, it's not a problem. Okay, thank you, Ms. Carmichael.
All right. And as Mrs. Gilmore already told you, the Louisiana Department of Education is asking that the class of 2021 submit the free application for federal student aid or the FAFSA as a requirement for graduation. Now, this simply ensures that your money is ready and waiting for you when you begin college in the fall. And because college can be expensive, it's time to start thinking about what those costs might be in preparing for them. And they include your books, equipment and supplies, so your notebooks, textbooks. If you need a computer next academic year, you can use your financial aid for that purpose. For your personal expenses like your phone bill, your laundry, if you're living off campus, fuel for your car, to drive back and forth to your classes, and any food purchases outside of your meal plan. Room and board, so whether you're staying in a dorm on campus or you're going to have your own apartment, you will have to pay for those expenses. And then tuition and fees. Now, when you're doing your college research, you are going to find a lot of information on what that school's tuition is, but you might not be aware that there are quite a few other fees involved. They can include your athletic fee, technology, parking, library fees. So all of that has to be added into your cost of attendance. But the good news is that student financial aid is available from the federal government, from your state government in the form of the TOPS scholarship, your college or career school, and then nonprofit and private organizations. Every year, the Department of Education awards over $120 billion in student financial aid. So we just want to make sure that you all are receiving your portion of that money. And that includes the federal Pell Grant, the Federal Supplemental Education Grant, the Teacher Educational Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, Federal Work Study, and then direct subsidized, unsubsidized, and plus loans. Now, the federal student aid grants are a form of financial aid that does not have to be repaid. So when you receive your financial aid offers, you always want to accept all of the grant monies. And those include the Pell Grant, which is for undergraduate students with financial need. The FSEOGs are for undergraduates with exceptional financial need. The service grants are for students of military parents who died defending the country following 9/11. And then the Teach Grant, which is for students who are pursuing a teaching career. Now, the Federal Work Study Program provides part-time jobs to help you pay for your education expenses. So when you say yes on the FAFSA that you're interested in work study, the Financial Aid Office will consider you for positions there on campus. Any money that you earn in a federal work study job goes directly to you to help pay for your miscellaneous expenses. And I'll tell you that these are great jobs. You might be working in the library, in the athletic department. You might be working for the dean of the department in which you're studying. And it also looks great on your professional resume. So you can graduate with a very impressive job under your belt already. Now, the financial aid student loans, there are several types. There's the unsubsidized loan, and these are need-based loans. No interest is charged on this type of loan until you graduate or you cease to attend. On the other hand, there are the unsubsidized loans. These loans are for every student, but you must remember that interest is going to be accruing on this type of loan once you, while you're in school, and then of course, after you graduate until you have that loan paid off. So you can see that there is a difference between the subsidized and unsubsidized loans. So when you receive your financial aid offer, you need to take this into consideration. And you can remember to accept your subsidized portion first by telling yourself that the U in unsubsidized means that you always pay the interest on that loan. If you are offered loans and you accept them, you always want to take the federal student loans first because payments are not due until you graduate or cease to attend. The interest rate is fixed at a lower rate and no credit check is required. These loans are in the student's name only. If you find that you need additional money and you're offered private student loans, make sure you're thinking through that because these loans are usually a much higher interest rate. They may require payments be made while you're still in school, and often you'll be asked to list a cosigner, which means that you're going to be going to a parent or another adult and asking them to be part of that loan in case you don't repay it. So be very careful about accepting your private loans. So to dispel the myth, almost everyone is eligible for some type of federal student aid. And all federal student aid and most institutional and private aid is contingent upon completion of the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. And I think we have somebody with their mic on, so if you will turn that off, then everybody will be able to hear the presentation. Now, the FAFSA launches every year on October 1st. So hopefully some of you have already gotten started, but it's important to note that every October 1st, the FAFSA opens, and you must submit a FAFSA each year that you're in college. So this year's FAFSA will cover next year's expenses, um, and it will cover the fall and spring and probably your summer semester, depending upon the school schedule. Student financial aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis, so you want to make sure that you are submitting your FAFSA as soon as possible. We've been told that over 1 million FAFSAs have already been submitted for next academic year. So make sure that you're getting to the head of the line while the money is still available so that you will be offered the maximum award that you're eligible to receive. Now remember to pay close attention to all of the deadlines. Your college is going to have a financial aid or FAFSA completion deadline. The TOPS scholarship requires a FAFSA deadline be met. Federal student aid has a deadline, and your school district might have a deadline set for you as well. Now, before you get started on the FAFSA, gather all of the documents you're going to need to complete the form, because if you do, it should take no longer than 30 minutes. Some people whip through it in about 20. So if you have everything with you, that will include the student and parents' social security cards, the student and parents' 2019 federal income tax returns, if you filed, your W-2s, because there could be information on this form that's not printed on your tax return. And then your bank statements and records of investments, because you have to report those balances as of the date you submit the FAFSA. You'll begin by creating the Federal Student Aid ID, because this is going to allow the student and parents to identify themselves electronically when accessing the FAFSA, and you must use it to sign and submit your FAFSA. It's going to consist of a username and password that you create and should only reflect your personal information. Now, each student and one of his parents should create an ID. And here's the website, fsaid.ed.gov. Now, students, you'll want to use your personal email address to create this account, because once you graduate from high school, your email address there will be disabled and federal student aid will not have any way to get in touch with you. Don't share information with your parents either. Sometimes students will use mom or dad's mobile phone as the alternate phone requested in the ID. But if you don't have an alternate phone, like a landline, just go ahead and leave that field blank. And remember that this ID is legally binding. So make sure you're recording it. You're going to need it every year that you're in college, and then keep it in a safe place. If you don't have access to a computer when you're ready to get started on your FAFSA, you can always download the FAFSA mobile app, and it's called My Student Aid, and it's very easy to use to submit your FAFSA on your mobile phone or any other mobile device that has internet access. Or if you prefer, you can complete the FAFSA using the web-based version at fafsa.gov. Now, if the student wants to use the mobile app, that's fine. And the parents can work on the web-based version if they choose, and everything will be integrated and ready to submit. You're going to want to begin the FAFSA by logging in with the student's FSA ID, because the FAFSA is the student's application for federal student aid. Now, the parent FSA ID is going to be used to transfer your tax information from the IRS into the FAFSA, if you choose to do so, and then again to sign the student's FAFSA. Now, you're going to see two options when you're asked to select the FAFSA that you want to submit. The class of 2021 should be completing the 2021-2022 FAFSA. And that's because you're going to be in college next academic year. The 2020-2021 FAFSA is for students that are attending college this fall and spring. So don't make that mistake and then have to go back in and also complete the 21-22. Now, once you get into the form, you're going to find that there are 8 sections that need to be completed before you submit. You'll see the student demographics section where you'll be asked to provide the student's social security number, name, date of birth, email address, physical address, and gender. You'll move to the school selection section where you'll report your high school name, any colleges that you plan to have your FAFSA data sent to, and your housing plans on those campuses. The dependency status section will ask you to consider a list of 10 questions to determine if you're dependent or independent. And I'll go over that a little bit more in depth in a few minutes. You'll be asked to provide the number of dependents in the student's household and the parent's education. Now, a lot of parents question why they're being asked to provide their level of education, but this is because there could be additional financial aid available for first-generation college students. Next, you'll move to the parent demographic section where the parents will list their social security numbers, their marital status, and their email address. Then you'll move into the parent and student's financial section where you'll be asked individually to report your working wages from 2019, any federal benefits that you receive, and your savings and investment balances. And then it's time to sign and submit. Once you do, you will receive confirmation that you've submitted. Now, as you move through the FAFSA, if you need clarification on a question, look over to the right-hand side. Beside each question, you're going to see a question mark. Just click there and you'll get a more detailed description of what they expect from you. There are hyperlinks provided throughout the FAFSA. You can click on those for more details. You can request a FAFSA chat while you're in the FAFSA. You can call Federal Student Aid, or you can call me on Leela's FAFSA helpline. But for this session, I'm going to cover only the most commonly asked FAFSA questions. Now, if you have a question that I don't cover this evening, just put it in that chat box and Mrs. Gilmore is going to review those and we'll go over them at the end. The citizenship requirement. Now, a student must be a citizen or eligible non-citizen to complete a FAFSA. And if you're not quite sure what an eligible non-citizen is, this is one of the hyperlinks. Just click there and you'll get a more detailed description. Now, if you do meet those requirements, but your parents do not, then those parents will enter zeros anywhere a social security number is requested. Then the student will go ahead and submit the FAFSA. Young men between the ages of 18 and 26 must be registered with Selective Service to receive federal student aid. So if you haven't already done so, you can register for Selective Service within the FAFSA itself, even if you're not 18 yet. And the day that you do turn 18, you will be automatically registered. Now, only the colleges that you list on your FAFSA will receive your information and consider you for student financial aid. So make sure you're adding all of the colleges that you're considering. Even if you haven't applied yet, go ahead and get them on your FAFSA. You can add up to 10 colleges each time you submit the FAFSA. Now, if you're planning to apply to more than 10 colleges, there are instructions in this section to help you go through that process. Let's talk just a minute about the dependency status section. You're going to be asked to consider these 10 questions. And if you can say yes to one of them, and you can provide a legal document supporting that claim, then you are considered independent and will not be asked to provide parental information. So remember, these are questions that you're answering on behalf of the student. Will you be 24 or older by January 1st of the school year for which you're applying for financial aid? Are you married or separated but not divorced? Will you be working on a graduate degree? Do you have children who receive more than half of their support from you? Do you have dependents other than children or a spouse who live with you and receive more than half of their support from you? Are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? Now, boot camp and basic training are considered training. So if you're going into the military right after high school graduation, you will still be considered a dependent student. Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? At any time since you turned 13, were both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care? Or were you a ward or a dependent of the court? Are you an emancipated minor? Or are you in legal guardianship as determined by a court? And it's important to note that legal custody is not always considered legal guardianship. So just make sure you have your documentation and review that before you answer that question. And then the last question, are you an unaccompanied youth who is homeless, or are you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? If you cannot answer one of these 10 questions, then you're going to be considered a dependent student for FAFSA purposes. And unfortunately, even if you live on your own and you file your own taxes, you still are going to be considered dependent unless you can answer one of those questions. But if you are in a special situation, you can contact the financial aid office and they will consider it and perhaps provide you with some additional support. And the number one question we are asked is, which parent or parents do I list on the FAFSA? So the parent or parents that you've lived with the longest in the past 12 months should be listed on your FAFSA. Now, if you live with both of your biological parents, then that's easy. You'll list both of them. But if the biological or legal parent that you've lived with the longest in the past 12 months is separated, divorced, or was never married, you should list only that legal parent on your FAFSA. However, if that parent is remarried, then you must report his or her spouse as well. In other words, federal student aid wants to know the financial standing of the household that the student has lived in the longest in the 12 months prior to the date that the FAFSA was submitted. If you find yourself in a situation where you're identified as a dependent student, but your parents refuse to provide information on your FAFSA, you can go ahead and submit stating, I'm unable to provide information about my parents, and you can submit the form. However, you must contact the financial aid office to talk to them about your situation so that they can consider you for additional financial aid. They're not just going to ask you, do you need some extra help? You are going to have to contact them directly, because if not, you will not be considered for any grant money. You'll only be offered student loans. Now, to make the financial aid process go smoother and a lot quicker, please attempt to use the Internal Revenue Data Service data retrieval tool if you filed a 2019 tax return. And if you're having trouble using this tool, please call Federal Student Aid or us directly. This is going to not only make your FAFSA data a lot more accurate, it's going to make the process go more smoothly. It will also diminish the students' chances of being selected for verification by their college. In other words, if you're going to manually enter your tax information, the college is going to ask you to go back to the IRS website and request a tax transcript proving that those amounts are valid. Once you do link to the IRS, you'll be there on their website. You'll take your 2019 income tax return and enter information exactly as printed on your return. So we've had situations where perhaps the tax preparer misspelled the first or last name. Maybe you've moved since that return was filed. The IRS is not concerned with what your situation is now. They want to know exactly how your return was filed. So make sure that you're doing that, and it will make it a lot easier on you when you're trying to connect. And then you're almost finished with the FAFSA. But before you submit, please review this student aid report. It reflects every question that you're asked and shows your answer to it. So by reviewing this, you're going to ensure that the financial aid office receives accurate information so that they can quickly process your student financial aid. Now, the parent and the student and one of his parents will be asked to sign the FAFSA, and this is where your FSA IDs or electronic signatures will come into play. If you submit your FAFSA without signatures, it is going to be considered incomplete, and the processing of your aid is going to be on hold until you sign and submit. Once you do submit your FAFSA, you're going to see a confirmation page pop up on your screen. I'm encouraging you to print this page, although an email will be sent to the student's email address telling them that they did successfully submit their FAFSA. This is the only time you're going to get this much detail. You'll find out what steps need to be taken to complete the student financial aid process. You'll see a list of the colleges that are going to receive your FAFSA data. You can review your estimated expected family contribution and consider your financial aid estimates. And I want to specify that these are estimates based on your FAFSA answers. And everybody gets excited when they see the dollar amounts. But please remember that each college financial aid office is going to verify your information, and they are going to be the ones to determine aid on their campuses. You're not going to receive your federal student aid from your student financial aid from federal student aid. That will come from the college financial aid office. Now, if you do begin your FAFSA and you save it and you go about your business and decide that you're going to put it off for a while and go back and finish up later, it's important to note that the FAFSA will be wiped clean if you do not submit it within 45 days. So you'll receive an email from Federal Student Aid every week or so saying that there's action required, and at that time, You'll just go back and you'll log into your FAFSA and continue on. Now, what if you submit your FAFSA and you want to add a school, or your address has changed, you want to change your contact information, or your college financial aid office has seen an error and they ask you to correct it? You will simply go back to the FAFSA website or the app and use your FSA ID students to log into your FAFSA and make those corrections or additions. But remember, each time you do, you must sign and submit the FAFSA again. Now, once your FAFSA is fully processed, at that time it's going to be shared with your colleges. Usually takes 3 to 5 days. Once they receive your FAFSA information, they are going to begin to identify any aid that you might be eligible to receive on their campus. But if your family's financial situation has changed since 2019, and good grief, with COVID-19 and all the hurricanes we've had in Louisiana, we're going to see a lot of that this next academic year. The Financial Aid Office does have the ability to award you some additional money. So if your parents have lost jobs, or if there's been a reduction in work hours or any unexpected medical expenses, just communicate that to the Financial Aid Office and they'll work with you. They're going to be working to determine what your net price is going to be. And they're going to take their cost of attendance on their campus. Then they're going to subtract out any grants or scholarships that they have available to offer you. And that will reflect your net price. Now, the net price does have to be repaid before you can complete your first semester. So you can either pay for that out of pocket, or you can accept student loans to pay that balance. Now, the student financial aid offer, as I mentioned, is going to reflect the cost of attendance on each college campus, any grants, scholarships, work study, student loans that you've been offered. So you'll want to read over each financial aid offer carefully and respond to all requests so that they can quickly process your aid. And remember, every college that you apply to and send FAFSA data to is going to send you a separate financial aid offer. Once you do make your decision, you're going to want to accept your aid in this offer. Scholarships and grants first, because this is gift aid that does not have to be repaid. Federal work study next, because you've earned this money and you don't have to pay it back. And then your student loans, because this is borrowed money. It must be repaid and with interest. And I know this is a lot of information tonight, so I want to offer you Leela's FAFSA Completion Guide, where this is all discussed in greater detail, and it's free for all Louisiana high school seniors. So if you haven't already received your copy, you can send me an email and I'll provide you with my contact information at the end of the presentation. I'll also include our senior checklist, and this will just help you keep on track so that you're ready for college in the fall. And one of the most important topics that we'll discuss tonight are scholarships. And I know that you know this is gift aid. It doesn't have to be repaid, and there are thousands of them. And they're offered by your colleges, by your parents' employers, community organizations, or social or religious groups. Some are based on your academic achievement. Some are based on a special talent or a trait that you might have. And others are based on financial need. But the bottom line is, by applying and receiving scholarships, you are reducing the cost of your education and your student loan debt. So make sure that you're asking about scholarships. I'm sure your high school counselor has already provided you with quite a list of those. And check with your college financial aid office or your admissions recruiters. They see a lot of money coming into their campuses. They might have some ideas for you as well. This year, Leela is offering a $1,000 FAFSA Completion Scholarship. So if you're a Louisiana high school student and you've completed your FAFSA, this is an easy scholarship for you to complete. You can find the application on our website at leela.org. And once you're in college, or if you have an older sibling who's already in a Louisiana college, you can apply for the $1,000 Choose Louisiana Scholarship. Now, for those of you that are going to pricier colleges and you have exhausted all your opportunities for the federal and state monies, all scholarships, and you still have some unmet financial need, Leela does administer a nonprofit education loan program, and you can find the details at leelachoice.org. So now is the time to ask your questions, and I'm going to let Mrs. Gilmore take it from here, but I do want to leave you with my contact information and let you know that I'm available to help you as you're working through your FAFSA, or if you have any questions after you submit it. And a copy of this presentation is going to be posted on our YouTube channel. It's called Ask Leela, and you're welcome to take a look at it and review it if you need to. So Mrs. Gilmore, I'll let you take over.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carmichael, for the presentation on tonight. We so appreciate it. Students, at this time, if you have any questions for Ms. Carmichael, or parents, if you have any questions for Ms. Carmichael, please unmute or type it in the chat box. Any questions? Okay, good. Well, that means, Ms. Carmichael, you did an excellent job of explaining everything.
Well, I'm so glad. And a lot of times people want to speak privately with you, and I'm always available as well. So
Yes,
thank you so much for having me.
yes, ma'am, and thank you all for logging in on tonight. If you have any questions, please contact me or come see me at school, or you can contact Ms. Carmichael. That's it, Ms. Carmichael.
Thank you so much, and good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.